Welcome to Ella Global Community,
a safe space for queer women
and non-binary people of all backgrounds
to inspire, empower, and support one another.
We are really excited for you to join us
in creating our dream.
A global home
for the community.
A place to belong, to be yourself,
and connect with people like you.
A place to spark connections.
Share experiences and stories.
And join meaningful conversations.
Feel free to try everything.
Join our groups and events.
And give us honest, critical feedback.
This pilot is a test version
where we want to try things out
and learn about your wishes.
Your voice matters.
And we cannot do this without you.
No idea is too outlandish.
What is your dream for this community?
Let's build it together.
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 Hi everyone and welcome. This is Ella Talk. I'm Danielle, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm your host tonight. Before we begin, please take a moment to notice two boxes on the bottom of your screen. One is the chat box, where we interact, and the other is the Q&A box. Questions for our guests should go in there. We'll get back to those 10 minutes before we end the talk. Tonight we will listen to three amazing women. Women who have never met in person, but found meaningful connection, interacting, learning, and sharing experiences with one another. And how much more Ella platform could that be? Our moderator is Marina Esperafico. She's Ella Brazil Stakeholder Manager. Marina is an incredible strategist, diversity and inclusion expert. People say she's a true magician with spreadsheets. And like many of us, Marina found new love during the pandemic. Hers is called surfing. Marina is the friend you call when you need a partner in crime or to feel accepted at the end of a difficult day. I recommend looking her up on the platform, inviting her for a virtual cup of coffee. You will never want to let go, just like me. Marina, thank you. And Marina gets to talk to two very special guests, Marion Mulder and Sharon Green. Sharon has genuine curiosity for people and how we can all be the best version of ourselves. Her fascination lies in finding better ways for humans to work together, and she believes nothing is impossible if you have a growth mindset. She created the Human Workplace Manifesto as a fresh approach for a new and better corporate world where everyone wins. Her belief is that together we can change the world of work for good. She's a trained business coach and our very own community manager for Ella Sweden. It's such an honor to have you here, Sharon. And to make this conversation even more interesting, we also get to welcome Marion. Marion, she has been working in the field of digital technology since 1998 and is still fascinated by how digital technology shapes today's and tomorrow's business processes and relationships. It's more than 20 years of work on visions and strategies for implementations of various emerging techs. The red thread through Marion's career is making digital technology work for you. She's part of the Women in Voice Netherlands core team, part of the Women in AI Netherlands, and co-founder and board member of the Workplace Pride Foundation. And Marion is a future maker. Marina, Marion, and Sharon, we are listening.
Thank you so much, Dani. Thank you so much for the introduction. For those who haven't met Dani yet, she is very well known for making people feel very, very good, feel great in just a few words, just a few seconds. And I'm also thrilled to have you all here today. Marion, Sharon, as Dani already mentioned, we truly appreciate you taking the time to share your experience and ideas with us. Thank you very much. And also how important it is to talk about this that we're going to talk about today, the experience of being queer at work, because work and queerness, after all, are two constant elements in our lives. And I'll start actually with a provocative question to both of you. Is it really time for us to stand for who we are? And if we do, is it always our responsibility to educate people on queer subjects in the workspace? Sharon, why don't you go first?
Because that's the easiest question. And can I just say thank you so much for the invitation to speak here tonight. I had some technical issues, but I made it. So thank you, and thanks for your patience. Is it time for us to come out? And is it our responsibility to educate others? I'm glad you started with an easy question. Thank you, Marina. Well, I have been working in many diverse businesses. I started off in media, which I witnessed so many sexist and racist and homophobia. And I was very, very scared to come out. I was only in my 20s, mid-20s. And then I got good at it. And I progressed through the career ladder, and I got safety, you know, in terms of I had a partner, I had a house, I had a stable job. And then I moved on to more senior levels, and I felt more privileged. And I felt a duty and responsibility to come out, to be the person that I had needed, because there was nobody. And that led to some pretty destructive behavior. I had nowhere to go, no one to talk to. So I decided when I felt safe enough that it was time for me to use my privilege, because I had it, and to help people like the 25-year-old me. And that, have we got a responsibility to educate people? I used to think, get to know me and then I'll tell you that I'm queer. Now I say, I'm here, I'm queer, deal with it. And it has encouraged so many people around me. I can't even tell you, it's been amazing. And I'm so grateful that I could be the person that I needed.
We all are, yeah. Marion.
Well, is it our time? I would say, you know, I would say yes, but that's because I'm hopeful. You know, for me, I'm hoping this is our time, and we could, you know, we can all be ourselves. I am positive in the sense that I'm seeing positive change around me, but I would also say yes, but it is about what Sharon already said, you know, do you have the privilege? Do you feel secure and safe enough to do that? So it's safety first. So it's very situational. And I came from privilege when I came out at work. I had examples around me. I had David, who was my colleague back in the time, and we ended up co-founding the LGBTI network at the company I was working for back in the day. But it was very easy to not think about it and just going on with my life until I met someone. And then you're all of a sudden, you know, you're in love and you have to start hiding. As long as you're single, you don't have to lie. And if someone says, are you in a relationship? Do you have a husband? Or you can just say no without lying. But when there's someone special comes into your life, it feels very untrue to yourself and to your partner if you start to talk around it or just ignore it. And I've also learned if you aren't sharing much about yourself in what seems to be very normal conversations at work, like, you know, if someone just asks you, so, and it depends on the culture, how much they ask you. I'm from the Netherlands, and basically in the first moment that you meet people in new meetings, you know that they have a wife, 2 children, a dog, and, you know, their mother is currently XYZ. They tell you everything. So I know I've been in situations where the room went round and I think, oh, shoot, I have to come out. So then you get that choice, and you have to make that choice whether you feel safe enough. But also, I also had to learn how to then be casual about it, so it didn't become the topic of conversation for the rest of the afternoon. I'm lucky enough now that when I'm somewhere, if someone asks you something, I would just say, oh, my girlfriend or my wife or something along those lines in a casual manner. So it doesn't feel like coming out and being like in people's face. but it is always a choice. So and when it comes to education, it's the same question. Do you feel safe enough? And I choose my battles, and I also choose my battles in how fierce my response is to someone, whether I feel and the English word ignorant is really good for that. So ignorance means either you just didn't know, and then it's helpful to nudge people and give them a correction, but without making them feel bad because they really didn't know, and you just that it's new to them and you're being helpful. And then there's the ignorant that just blatantly purposely do certain things, and the question is, does it help to then try and educate them? Again, then it depends on the situation, what they're saying, whether it's homophobic comments, and so for me it's always very situational, and it's about am I safe? And that's in the workplace, but it's also in society. And when my personal story, when I met this person, and I was thinking out, how do I discuss this at work? Should I at all talk about this at work? I met David, and he gave me this great answer when I asked him, so do you tell people? And he then said, if they ask me, I tell them. If they don't like the answer, it's their problem. I thought, well, that's a nice rule of thumb. But again, you have to feel that. So when he asked me to join the LGBT network and co-found it with him, and become basically the face of the women, I thought, oh God, do I want to be the Uber Dyke of this company and just be known for that? Because I don't want to be known for being a lesbian. I want to be known for my qualities. But it has actually, so I said yes, and it's actually brought me a lot, because I have learned over the years how to normally talk about it without it being a huge issue. It gave me a platform to be on stages and educate people at the appropriate moments. And we went on to found Workplace Pride in 2006 with 4 company networks, and now we are over 75 or more employers. We've basically got a global reach, and we are changing workplaces around the world. So for me, that is ways of education. But I also appreciate that if you are in a difficult country, then your first priority is your own safety, and you might choose to not disclose it, or disclose it to only a few people that you trust, like maybe your manager only and not the rest of the organization. And it really depends on, is it needed? And there's 2 sides to it. As it needed it is about your being, can you be freely yourself, or if you not tell someone, is it then limiting you? Yeah, that's kind of the important part. But the other side is people sometimes say, well, people at work don't have to know. And I don't fully agree with that, because I think we spend 1/3 of our time at work. So that means 1/3 of the time you have to be mindful and hide. And that's just very stressful. So I would hope you feel confident and safe enough that your workplace is actually a good place for you, where you can be out without having to be on the barricades all the time. That's a different situation. I don't think everybody needs to be on the barricade. That's for the happy few that really feel passionate about that. So the rest of us don't have to, as long as we support each other. So I already warned you, Marina, you need to sort of stop me to get a word in. Because I will happily keep talking. But yeah, that's my long answer to your question.
Thank you so much. Actually, the last part about how important it is for the company to create a welcoming environment. This is key, because it's a very this experience is very individual, as you just said. So my question is, how can we demand that the company tackles awareness and does not make this an individual issue that falls on me or other LGBTQ colleagues, but in the company itself?
Well, there's a couple of things. Demanding, I'm not sure. That depends on the company culture and the country you are in. What I've seen that we have done is we started an employee network for 2 reasons. One is to say, am I the only one? And just to feel you're not alone, and to have your peers around you so you can discuss things if need be. But there's always this one or few people who can run that network and can then go into senior management, do HR, or to the CEO, depending on what works well, and basically say, look, this is where the company needs to do better. And this is how we can help as a community. And this is good for us as employees, but it's also good for you as a company. And it depends on the type of management that you have, whether or not you play the business productivity card, or whether you say it's just the right thing to do. And that really depends on how masculine and traditional the organization is. For a long time, we were talking about the business case for LGBT inclusion and for diversity at work. I was happily preaching that. I'm now at the point thinking, well, why does it need to be a business case? Why do we need to quantify this financially, that we have we need to be equally, happy at work? So it's much more about the social side of things, as being a good employer, and it's just the right thing to do. That's I think why employee networks, when they exist, are important, because they can voice to the organization what needs to be better, and that's I think it's a good way of demanding. Sharon,
your experience is amazing on that. So I would like to hear from you as well, and also how to deal with a leadership within a company who is not engaged in queer issues as well.
It's really interesting because yesterday I went to pick my little boy up, and my ex-wife said to me, and I said, oh, we've got an LGBTQ plus meeting tomorrow. And she said, do you really need that these days? Do people still suffer? And alarmingly, almost 74% of people between the ages of 18 and 26 reported that they didn't feel comfortable coming out at work. Now, the worst thing about that is work isn't even work anymore. Our worlds have collided, they've smashed together. So if we're trying to hide, and it's okay because that's spent for 8 hours a day at work, which is stressful in itself, then trying to hide those collided worlds is even worse. And employers have a duty and a social responsibility to the mental health of their employees. I see this as the community should, or the organization should be a safe space to be able to bring your whole self, or your authentic self, to the workplace. I noticed when I came out, I felt the biggest sense of relief. I actually started to feel proud of myself, and little heads started appearing in the corner, and somebody would deliberately bump into me at the coffee machine and say, oh, hello, and hello, and then they would drop it into the conversation. I just want you to know, oh, I'm with my girlfriend. It felt very natural. So yeah, we definitely have a responsibility as organizations. I really believe micro progressions rather than aggressions will lead to the revolution. So it doesn't really matter, whatever you can do to create these micro progressions, do it, as long as you're safe. Tick that box first. Be safe, be secure. And don't put yourself in danger, but if you have the privilege, take the stand and make that micro progression.
And maybe to add to that, depends, of course, on the type of organization you work in. I'm used to working for larger corporate and international organizations. And if I look at the companies and organizations that have joined us, were traditionally large employers who might have a head office in a country where it's safe and easy. So what we've seen is often head office where in safer countries is making efforts with the employee network to also get the policies and the messages out to countries where the company is being more progressive than the local law and culture. So that is also an opportunity to just to see from I like your micro progression, to sort of say, well, go from a safe place. So as an individual, but also from the countries of privilege, use that to say, okay, well, if it's so safe for you here, make sure you make it safe too. And when I do speak to companies, when saying about employment, say, well, you can't be a safe and good employer if you only think about the 9 to 5 moment. It's if people aren't safe from 5 to 2009. So if you have if you want to make sure that you are a corporate social responsible company, which nowadays most companies do want to be on that impact ladder, and depending on again the size of your company and where you live, you are actually required to report on how well you are doing in all sorts of diversity and sustainability across the board. So it's also in the company's interest to take our interests at heart, and also making sure that the companies are doing more and more also for society in the countries where they have staff. So and it works really well if you have the employee networks internally who often are the starting point, and then work with HR or whoever leadership is willing to say, well, this can't be right. We want to make sure our employees are safe wherever they work. And so one of the things that is really an interesting tool, besides I want to learn more about Sharon's tool and manifesto as well, by the way, but is the UN LGBT business standards, which is actually saying, phase 1 is do not harm human rights, which is like but that's still a thing. Then it's also about employee protection and the marketplace. So how do you treat your consumers? And then it's outreach to the community. So from Workplace Pride, we've actually worked with them for the toolkit for companies, so how to report well on these LGBT business standards for the normal governance reporting, and we also have our own benchmark. And at the moment, we're actually working on I'm calling it an NGO toolkit, or social CSO, so what is it? Corporate social organizations, or whatever the abbreviation is nowadays. And actually, it is a way where the more activist local organizations and the business worlds are being brought together to learn to speak each other's language, and saying, how can we align our goals to make sure we make the world a better place? And it's surprisingly how many companies actually want to do that. And it was also, well, not surprising, also worrying that a lot of the activist organizations don't know how to speak to employers. And I appreciate if you're in a difficult country, the employers might not always feel as your best friend, but and corporates also have other brands and reputations. But there's actually a lot that companies nowadays are doing across the board. So that I think that's helpful, specifically if you are in an NGO, and if you don't feel safe in the country where you are in the employment, it's interesting, it's worthwhile to seek out if there's an NGO in your country that can play a role in speaking to the employers on your behalf without you having to do it yourself.
Excellent, Marion. Thank you very much. I'm glad you mentioned the standards proposed by the UN, and I have a question about that too, because, well, through Ella, we have accessed the realities of many different worlds, and it's very interesting to exchange our experiences. I would also encourage and invite you, everyone who is listening to us, if you want to share your experiences, your perspectives about it. It would be nice to have different points of view, so we can maybe discuss together about the process of coming out in your country, in your work space. And I believe that the question is more related to how can we connect grassroots activism, or how, in which extent is grassroots activism connected to the reality of the corporate world?
Well, I think you can see, it depends if you look at it positively. I think that it's getting improvement. There's improvement going on, but also the other reality is that the worlds are often far apart. If I look at our organization, we have NGOs such as HEFOS and Greenpeace actually as our members, and they work. So we have also the NGO world, at least some of the established NGOs, being part of the membership. And I think there is still a big disconnect. I know that some of the NGOs don't want to work, or local organizations, activist organizations don't want to work with corporates because they don't believe in them, because they're doing a lot of other things wrong, and I appreciate that. But there are a lot of companies who are making actual positive strides, and it's finding the balance, choosing the the lesser of the two bads, I guess, saying, well, if we work together, we can improve the world. Ideally, I don't have to work with them, but if I work with them, I can reach more than if I don't work with them. But we don't speak each other's language. In the pre-conversation, we were reminiscing with Kristen about our time in Kiev, and this was like 2 years ago with the European Lesbian Conference. And I've noticed, some of the women there are very radical, and I appreciate that because we need the radicals to make the noise. So for them, working with companies is probably a step too far, but with a lot of other organizations, that might actually work. So I'm really looking forward to our toolkit that is being developed, and I believe that we are advertising or not presenting it at the Copenhagen Out Games, Pride Copenhagen World Games, Euro Games. What is it? The Copenhagen Games and Conference thing. That's where we are. There's a conference part of it, and I understand that's one of the part when we are doing that, and we're also working, for example, with HEFOS, which is a Dutch organization, but is doing a lot of great things for the global South on a program for Free to Be Me, and I think that is run from Kenya. So it's really, the worlds are finding each other, and sometimes it is the intermediate organizations such as Workplace Pride or HRC or Stonewall that play the intermediate roles, but bringing the worlds together. But I'm seeing positive alignments, but are we there yet? No, not by far.
Sharon, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in Sweden now for coming on to 10 years, and it's a microcosm of acceptance in terms of LGBTQ+, and so I speak from a very privileged, I keep using this word, but a very privileged perspective. I would say that it's even more accepted in the UK. But yeah, so I haven't noticed that as much. However, we definitely have issues in our company in the fact that I think there's 10 members of the LGBTQ+ network, and we have 1,700 people, which, if you look at the statistics there, we want to know why they're not feeling that they can show themselves in this supportive and safe environment. I think corporates have needed to hear the business perspective and the statistics. I remember there was a real surge in workshops on emotional intelligence, something that women are actually fantastic at and already had. But then, men discovered that they needed it too. So the demand went through the roof. And similarly, I really think that companies are recognizing this, and a CSR strategy or a network strategy used to be something that could sit in a boardroom, in a cupboard, getting dusty, and they could say, yeah, we've done our bit. There's a strategy, it's in the cupboard. And now, due to these, again, micro progressions, people are demanding more, and they're representing, they're showing up, and they're being braver, and they're able to start conversations. Marion and I are in Clubhouse a lot, and there are people there that have the stage, they have a platform where they can raise their issues, and we can't hide from it, and it's great. We need to be doing what we can based on our own situation. But yeah, definitely, I think companies, in my opinion, are really having to turn onto it.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think one of the things you mentioned, the 10 employees in the size. What I've also noticed is it's always where are the women. And since a couple of years, I've started to educate where possible and take my stage about explaining why you don't see any lesbian women that often. Well, one of them is most of the times the networks are actually run by gay men, which we then self-select ourselves out thinking, well, this is a gay men's network and we have our own assumptions about it. But it's also the fact that we are women is often enough for us to focus on that part, and the lesbian part comes later. Because there's enough to deal with as a woman in a workplace often. Yeah. And again, if that depends on where you are from that, it might not be helpful to you know, do you think, well, I've got enough to deal with being a woman, never mind a lesbian? Unless, like myself, you work in IT, all of a sudden when you're saying I'm a lesbian, you become one of the guys, and it can actually be helpful. But it depends on where you are in the organization. And I think that's what I'd like to do also more with the privilege that I have, is talk the stories about, you know, what it is about women. And so I think 2 years ago, this was before COVID, I gave a presentation at the IE University Management School in Madrid. I think it was 300 men and like 10 women there, mostly gay men and a bunch of women, which either are from HR or lesbians, you never know. So I basically explained to them, you know, what the world looks like, and the statement that women are less than men and therefore men should rule them is 10% of the world is just agrees with that, and the low end, and it goes up to about 50% in certain countries. And the interesting part was there were some of that map, and this was an Ipsos research. The next slide I showed was the part in the middle of the map wasn't actually, they didn't have data. I said, well, it's not like it was rosy there, we just didn't have the data from it. And then I pulled up another slide about, you know, what women face in difficult countries, and mentioned things like corrective rape, being married out, and all of these issues, saying, well, if that's the things that your daily reality is, yeah, you're not going to be talking about being out at work, you're just surviving and making sure you can work at all. So we need to make the privileged people, both men and women, more aware of why that is sometimes the case, so that women already have to fight quite a hard fight just being a woman in the workplace most of the time, that the orientation might not be something you want to be, that might feel as an extra issue. What I do feel is we need to be mindful also about, you know, what specific needs do lesbian women need from a policy and practices in companies. And that has to do often with, you know, birth, being mothers, being two mothers. I know the men also adopt children, and that's but there's typical things that people don't mind, especially when it's men who don't think of, that we need. And I see that's where the role of the LGBT network comes in, and why we need women in those networks, and vocal women, to highlight, like, this might not be a big thing to you, but this is big to us. And it's the same thing as was it yesterday, Monday, Ida Hobbit, that we made a big case of putting an L in there, because lesbian phobia is not the same as homophobia. We're dealing with different things. We're dealing with over-sexualization that men don't deal with. There's a lot of things that we need to be mindful of that are typical for lesbians. So yes, we need to make sure we get that word out. And whether or not you call yourself a gay woman, or queer, or a lesbian, or bisexual, or non-binary, wherever we are in this entire spectrum, that is all important, that you can use your own terminology, but we need to make sure that we are dealing with lesbian phobia, and people aren't aware of that. So that's up to us privileged folks to get that message out.
Excellent, very, very good. And you have mentioned your coming out stories a bit, very superficially, and how when you moved to senior positions, how that experience helped you on creating a safer environment for everyone. And we have a question here from Carol. She's from the United States, from Denver. This was supposed to happen at the end of the event, but I think it's very connected to what I was right now. So Carol,
go for it.
Speak and make the question yourself. Please feel free, just raise your hand and we'll let you speak. If you don't want to, I can make the question for you. And so she says, well, let me know. So she says that she always have participated in workplaces that are open and welcoming, and in an industry that is generally open and welcoming media. However, she's about to launch. Okay, great. She's gonna talk.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you all. And so, yes, just to piggyback on what you were saying, I've been in this open and inclusive industry, media, but I'm about to launch with a national media company. And I am keenly aware of shifting legislation in the US that is anti-LGBTQ and anti-inclusion. And so part of my work is going to be to create inclusion policy for media companies. And these are independent media companies, not legacy owned, not hedge fund owned. These are independent media companies. So I find that lip service, even within those companies, is sometimes greater than action, on behalf of top management. So I really appreciate your suggestions on, is something good for business versus is it the right thing to do? And also the micro progressions versus aggression. But I'm wondering if there are any other suggestions on creating a pipeline of inclusion, because even in this case, a lot of these independent media companies are still run by men. And so how to alter that pipeline to get women and queer women into that pipeline. If you have suggestions or thoughts to riff off of, I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that, Marion, if that's okay. We have exactly the same issue. I have a media background. I started with Capital Radio Group. I became an advertising account director. Then I moved to The Guardian. So, big national media houses. And yeah, there's an element of sexism, but actually I did find it quite an easy thing to be my creative and authentic self in that environment. Now I work in a heavily technical industry, and I definitely recognize that there is a difference. Just recently, to build the pipeline, as you were talking, I've launched a new people managers program for our staff, and we have the performance management, all that kind of HR stuff going on in the background. So just know we tick that box. However, my boss and I looked at the statistics, and we had 3 out of 38 people that were female to go onto this course. So we made a very executive decision that our leaders were having unconscious bias and were downgrading their female teams, not consciously, not maliciously, just unconsciously. So we lowered the level and we went down a level to get more females. And also we find that females weren't that great in standing up for themselves. So we're now doing mentoring, female mentoring. We're going to be running a whole host of female only workshops just to give space and freedom for the women in our organization, which is predominantly men at the moment, to break through that tech ceiling, if you like. So yeah, definitely making room for them, I think, would be the best recommendation. And being conscious that there's things going on underneath the surface that you probably know about, but yeah, let's anticipate them and change the process. Marion.
Well, to add to that too, you mentioned the business case thing and versus the right thing to do. From a business case point of view, I think that the key message to try and get across is you need diversity of thought for innovation, and to not become obsolete and become this Kodak who just didn't realize, what's digital about. It's about the reach. So if you're in media, the world is actively changing. Nowadays, young influencers have more power than some of the bigger media outlets. And if you have a very narrow group around you, which is like the emperor's new clothes, who are all the same as you don't see what's going on, and you're going to miss the boat. And if you compare it to the Netflix of this world, you see also that their diversity manager is fantastic, but you also see it in what they're doing, both in their organization, but you see it also in their media, in the documentaries they put out, and it's growing their markets because you're reaching more people. So if they want to continue to reach who they've ever reached, and that's an aging demographic, and they're happy to go obsolete in the coming 20 years, great. If that's not your long term goal, then you need to make sure you need to understand your market, and you need to understand subtleties. You can't do that if you don't have the people in your house. It's about language that matters, and you know, even amongst ourselves, you already notice how difficult it is. If do we use the word lesbian? Do we use the word queer? What's the difference? You can't have that discussion if you don't have the people around you and saying, oh, this is, both are okay if. So then people get scared and then they go walk away from it. So they definitely need that. So at boardroom level, it's about making sure they understand. And if you want to be future proof, you need to have a diversity in your staff, because otherwise we're just going to die, because we don't understand what the market's going to be like. We don't know what millennials think. And millennials, by the way, if you want to get them into your organization, with you all seem to want, they expect you focus on impact. So if they look at a boardroom picture and just see white men in suits, are going to make their assumption that this is not an inclusive company, and they don't want to buy your products, and they don't want to be an employee. So you're going to lose out on your talent. You're going to lose out on your turnover. That's at least a card you can definitely play. If they're not listening to that, I would say get the hell out of there and go into a different industry, because it's a doomed place to be. Again, this is me being very privileged, but it being in the US, and I don't know if you've already seen the 14th Amendment on Netflix, the docuseries. Very worthwhile watching, to get you all sorts of input about the American conversation to have.
Thank you very much.
I'm Marion. I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Carol, for the question.
I recognize.
Sorry, that's
you
a
now.
Clubhouse mention.
Yes. Sharon, I would like to ask you a question about performativity, because sometimes environment can shape our actions, or can't they? What is your opinion about that? Like, when is it good or safer to perform in a certain way? Do you believe that performativity can help us as queer women or non-binary people at work?
I just think it's good to not have to check yourself all the time. I don't think it has to have a label. Be authentic. If you, as I keep going on about, if you can go and be who you are, and you stand in your own truth on a day-to-day basis, you will be a happier individual that will perform better in your job. You will be a better help to society. You'll be a contributor to the family. So whatever the title is, I would say it's about authenticity. And of course, there will be times that you'll feel like you want to retract into the shadows, and that's okay. You don't need to be anybody's hero but your own.
And I'm gonna continue with you just a little while more, because you have created the Human Workplace Manifesto, and yeah, it's an amazing work, and I think it's very related to that. Like, it's very inspiring when you talk about being yourself, being authentic. How powerful is that, and the micro progressions. So I would like to, I think everybody would like to hear more about this approach, and also the main challenges.
Okay, right. I wrote the Human Workplace Manifesto 6 years ago. And if you look at it, it's probably more relevant now than it was 6 years ago. In fact, it was a little bit like a rallying speech when I wrote it, because I wanted the world to change. I saw that I saw people literally dying on the streets, getting to work, and communities weren't being supported. There was so much happening, in my opinion, and I just wanted to give something, because I felt like I've had quite a wide experience in terms of business and personal growth, and also the kind of tough side of life as well. I had a lot of issues with bullying. I was raised as a Catholic, so my sexuality wasn't accepted, which led to a huge problematic relationship, which I stayed in for a long time because I thought I deserved it. And then I started studying psychology and business and how society works. And I thought, and I went to work for, and you probably know who they are, and that was about 7 years ago. They went to do some women's coaching, and I saw pain in the women's faces. Like that organization was totally, I probably shouldn't have mentioned the name actually, because that was a bit unprofessional, but I just feel a bit more open. I don't know why. Anyway, take that bit out if you wouldn't mind. But I went to work with an organization in Vienna, and I experienced that absolute conscious bias, and the sort of took me back to the 1920s, and it was something I wanted to challenge, and I wanted to change it, and I didn't know how to do it. And so I set about working on a manifesto, and I showed it to literally hundreds of people. I showed it to a nanobiologist, I've shown it to doctors, I've shown it to philosophers, I've shown it to psychologists, and everyone goes, why isn't this here? But it's my passion project. And Marion spoke about an index, and I think we should have a system where companies are rated against the key principles of the Human Workplace Manifesto in terms of their contribution to society as a whole. And in turn, the people in those organizations will prosper, the world will be a better place to live. And, you know, it's an ideology that I really subscribe to. And I truly believe, maybe not whilst I'm here, but in the future, that's what the world will look like.
And for those of us who don't know, there's got to be a URL somewhere, right? That you can now plug.
Yeah, there's the humanworkplacemanifesto.com.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to read it. And when you say there needs to be a place, it's interesting that the EU has recently, in April, agreed to a new or a tighter corporate sustainable reporting directive. So it'd be interesting to see what that directive is requiring corporates to do. And to how much of the people, planet, profit combination that you have in your manifesto is already being ticked. So it is a perfect time for that taken, and it's nice to see that there is some actions, but I'm sure yours is going much further and it's much more inspiring. So I'm going to look it up.
Thank you.
And Marion, actually, your experience, you have been working in the field of digital technology since 1998. Wow, it's like I studied from 2017, which is almost 20 years later, has shown that a high percentage of LGBTQ people who have left the job in the tech sector have faced public humiliation, embarrassment, or have been bullied. So it's very connected to what Sharon was talking about. Like, we're talking about it today, but I'm very curious to know, how was it in your field back then? How was the reality when you were at the beginning of your career, and how can queer people deal with the industries that are more challenging? I think we can learn a lot with your experience in this path.
Yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't feel like 20 years ago, and back then is different than it is today. I guess it makes a big difference that I come from a privileged position. I've been very vocal, and for me, coming out actually helped because I was dealing with the guys, and somehow it felt, maybe it's just in my own mind, I was more one of the boys, and I could be the hybrid. Actually, what happened to my career ever since the beginning, I was always like the communications person in IT, or that's what they thought, how they saw me. Or if I were in the business side, they would say, oh, that's that IT person. So for a long time, I felt I didn't belong anywhere because I wasn't, one of the comms people within the comms community, or the IT developers within that. But it took a while for me to click that is actually my niche, and I'm perfect suited for that. So the fact that I am, I know I'm born a woman. I don't necessarily feel like I always feel very feminine, and I've learned to go gender free, as in I now make the choices that which masculine parts in myself I like a lot and which feminine parts I like, and it's also sometimes contextual. So I learned to play with this, and actually that's a similar approach as in I work between the business and IT field. So sometimes for me it was embracing my differentness as a skill. The fact that I always had to check, like, okay, I don't fit in quite well with the women in comms or within HR. So how do I need to behave here? It made me very aware to learn how one was just enough adapting to what they find acceptable to still accept me, but also embrace that I'm different and therefore could bring the outside perspective or be the bridge between the two organizations. And I still see that is a really good skill. And today, I don't, so it does, I could talk about 20 years ago, but it was really finding your place and finding your niche and feeling comfortable in your skin and embracing what is different as a skill rather than trying to fix what you don't have. What we tend to do sometimes, it's like, oh, fix your flaws. No, focus on what you're good at and amplify that. If I look at the world today, actually, we're at a very interesting time, because with AI and algorithms and things like digital humans and deep fakes, a lot of it is based on data. And having people who can think a bit more out of the box to say, well, that's not quite right, and check the data and check the biases, because we are more aware of subtleties and biases, we're going to help if we step up to make technology better. So the fact that if you feel comfortable in saying, okay, I'm slightly different. So for example, I'm a non-binary person, that if you're in the right space is going to be very, very helpful, because you understand that why is a form asking for male, female? Why are we asking that anyways when you're signing up for an event? And asking those questions, because it's your daily reality, and then also being able to present, like, how about we do it this way? So a lot of my presentations I do nowadays are about gender-free technology, and saying that. I lost my train of thought there now for a second. But it is about asking those questions and educating the world around us and shaping the world the way we want it to be. So, for example, a lot of the chatbots are currently women. I found that quite interesting. So I asked the questions. I don't mind it. That's it. I don't mind chatbots or technology having a gender, but it's also about being conscious about it and making sure that we create a world that's better for everyone, and not just for the bros who work at Facebook in the beginning in the hoodies and that stereotype. So it's important to show the other stories. And I really like, for example, Lesbians Who Tech, which is a huge organization from the US, who are focusing on LGBT and non-binary people, and making and having all these amazing speakers talk about their knowledge. But also looking for employment for these groups, and the fact that I am now so outspoken about this thing, it's also I'm coaching 3 people at the moment for 3 different organizations. So Codem, which is a coding academy, Women in Voice, Women in AI, and in all 3 cases it's a non-binary person or a trans person that I'm now coaching, because she understands my world a little better, so we don't have to discuss all of these things, and we can focus on making myself better. And I love doing that. So, and that's what I like about today's world. That it's difficult, but it's about embracing it, I think. And if we don't step up now, a lot of things are going to be automated, and happily, all the biases and all the crap that we don't want is going to be in machines, and it's going to be very hard to get them out. So. Let's make sure we bring the diverse voices to the table right now in the beginning process, but also at the end. Sorry, that's my alarm going off. I guess that's me needing to stop talking. Yes.
Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing all that, both of you. You talked a lot about how we feel empowered when you're out, when we can be ourselves, and then I keep thinking, how can we, as colleagues and peers who are already very confident on being out of the closet in our workplace, how can we create a safe space for people who are not yet there, who are still in the closet and we can see that they are, but sometimes they're not ready. So how can we, what is the balance between wanting someone to feel safe without pressuring them if they're not vocal about it?
Oh, I never push anyone out of the closet. It's everyone's choice, and it's not something you do at one point and then you're done. It's every time. So it's always up to the person themselves whether or not they want to bring something forward. And I think that's up to well, this is one of the ways I am doing it, the micro progressions. I wear a rainbow watch. So
need one.
yeah, so it's helpful so even now, for example, in meetings, this will happen and someone will say, oh, rainbow watch. So if someone wants to reach out, they know that I'm pretty open. They see me and they can approach me. So for me, that's where it's subtle ways. And some people have that with a pin or a signature on their email saying I'm an ally, or you don't have to, you have to say, you don't have to put the rainbow color on it everywhere, but it depends on the company. But it is about subtle signals. So if you feel, you can talk about your partner and don't hide them away, and just show how it, I think it's up to us to show that the way we want to be. It's like, well, the ideal situation, if you can live it, because then you can show the way. And it also means that other people can approach you and say, hey, I have a question. Can you help me? Or how would you do this? Or how would you approach this? And we can help each other further. That's, I think, what I would say. Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, all of our networks are confidential. Nobody shares the network members, or, we have meetings that are inclusive. Anyone can join at any time. And we share our stories, we share our stories on the intranet, and we have a fantastic neurodiversity group, and I've learned so much from reading the posts. And now, parents have started sharing their stories about their children that have neurodiverse issues as well. So it spreads from inside out. So I would say that you just need to keep giving subtle hints that you're there if needed. Just be available and get to know people. If you're openly out because you stand in your own truth, you're confident in your professional capability, don't do that. Just do that. Go out and be yourself, and people that need to find you and need support will come to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, Marion?
One other thought I was thinking about, one of the things we've done with women, by the way, and this was lesbian women, is actually, I always say, if you want to put role models such, lesbians like myself on a stage, don't have them talk about being a lesbian, have them talk about their job, about something about content, because then we're seeing, oh, these are great people and they have great jobs and they're good at their work, and show that, and have other people, allies, say, yes, it's important that, have the diversity talk and say, yes, it needs to be a safe place. If I start saying it's important for lesbians to be themselves at work, they'll, yeah, of course, you want that because you're one of them. It's much more powerful if a male CEO says, it's important for me that the lesbians are feeling safe in my company. You go, oh, wow. Versus that makes much more impact. And I'd rather be, asked to talk about something I know a lot about, whether that's it's something on diversity or tech, or, to have people talk about their jobs. And that's something I've really learned. So we showcase what everybody's good at.
That's such a good point. And I think, like, I know that I have a career, an established career, and I can show you that career. And I'm not so sure I can demonstrate as much success in being a lesbian. So, like Marion said, ask me where my successes are.
Yeah. And I saw a question in the Q&A, by the way, about groups working together. Absolutely. Definitely, you see a lot more NGOs and the corporate world and the academic world working together. That's what we're doing at Workplace Pride, among others. The whole cross-pollination, the intersectionality, you see that really picking up. So I'm really happy that the different types of organizations are starting to find each other. So we use research from academic world to make a point towards the business world and get the NGOs work with the NGOs in where they're good at. And so, yes, absolutely. We all need to work together, and it's happening. But we can do more, and we're aware of that.
Yeah. We have another question too. It's from an anonymous person. Being a lesbian at work puts you in a situation where you get double chances of being attacked for being a woman and for being homosexual. I realized that and decided I won't be harassed by no one, so I became a badass boss. I hated one as well by many. For so long, it was the only way I could perform inside a male-dominant space, since I was the boss of many guys. But then I realized badass style was not me. I was mimicking some kind of stupid male's patterns of leadership. And I changed completely from workspace to attitudes to be the person I really am. A Pisces, delicate and passionate human, even at work. The result, I started being harassed constantly. Is being ferocious the only way a lesbian can perform or avoid harassment at work?
It's being what, sorry? What was the last part?
Ferocious.
Ferocious, okay. Yeah. Wow, I mean, I've experienced exactly the same thing. I have seen women crumble because there's a great quote, you can't be what you can't see. And that's why we need more women in leadership. And we see success and we want a bit of it, so we emulate. And is that authentic? No, actually it isn't authentic. For me, you have to decide the price of authenticity. I don't know the situation. I don't know where you are in the world, so I can't give you particular advice, but every single time for me it would be your authentic self. And if that company doesn't suit you, find one that does. Find that one that deserves you.
Marion, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, and you shared it really well, Sharon. And ideally, you have the choice and say, I'm not gonna put up with this. I'm gonna go to a place where they do appreciate my own style. But it is about, can you afford to do that? So yeah, if you can't afford to do that, and your survival tactic is, and it's about survival and safety, is being badass, then that's the way to go. But I do hope that we can find ways together to make being able to report that to the appropriate lines in the organization and saying this is not appropriate, this can't happen. And sometimes it helps if someone else is making that comment on behalf of you, so you don't get the backlash of it. So that's why I really like that we have LGBT networks, for example, so you can have that conversation. I've actually done that in the past, where I would get people saying, this is what's happening to me. I won't go to the HR, because then it will come out and they will approach my manager and I'll get more stick. I don't want that. So we generalized it and basically said, look, we know from our community that this is happening, and it's particularly happening in this part of the organization. Can you take measures such as diversity training or sensibility training or whatever you feel is appropriate, dear colleagues from HR, to make sure that this inappropriate behavior is not happening. And yeah, that's, again, it depends on where in the world you are, whether or not you can take these measures. So yeah, and sometimes survival is what you need to do.
And I would just say, just remember that it's not your problem, it's the problem of the organization.
Yeah, but you do feel the consequences, of course. So then yeah, you're right.
Thank you very much. Well, we have already ran out of time. So I just wanted to make one last question to both of you before we let you go. Everybody's enjoying the conversation a lot, so that's why we extended a little bit. I believe that many people here are feeling very inspired to own their queerness and stand up for who they are at work. I personally am. Thank you so much. But after all this talk and many things we talked about, how would you wrap up this talk? Like, what would be two main pieces of advice that you could give us to create a safer workspace for everyone? If you need to leave, we can. Can we finish this one? No, just let me know. It's fine.
Yeah.
I know we're over time already.
I believe we are responsible for building internal communities that are safe for our employees, and hopefully those micro progressions can just make a little dent and give somebody else a little bit of hope. And eventually we'll get there. But we just need to, doesn't matter how slow we move, just keep moving.
Thank you, Sharon.
What I would like to say is, if you are like us in a privileged position, use your privilege to change the world around you. So within your company, start a network, or at least support the network, or support those who take actions. Either very vocal or sometimes silent diplomacy is your route to go. If you're not in the position, look for people who are in your country, in NGOs, activists, or whatever, whoever can make the case for you and to create your safe world for them. And because we also need examples of where it goes wrong or what needs to be improved, and they can fight the case for you. And sometimes it's about finding colleagues in other countries where it is safer. And you know, luckily we have social media, so often you can find people through the Ella community here, through Clubhouse, through Facebook, or whatever is suitable for you. Maybe you even your company intranet with their communities. Seek out the vocal people in other countries and have anonymous conversations with them, as in, so they don't disclose your name if it's not safe. So yeah, if you are in a safe position, use that position to make the world better. And if you're not in a safe position, try and find people who can make your world safer for you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Marion. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you all for being here with us until a little later than we thought. We're very happy with this conversation and for being able to share all these insightful thoughts. We'll
and I'm on the platform, so if you want to reach out or you want to ask a question that you didn't want to ask in public, by all means, approach me.
Yeah, same here.
And the event will be published in our platform in a week, so we can keep our conversation there. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, and have a good evening, everyone, or a good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.